In the year 1972, on a sunny day, a happy group of people, including a rugby team led by their friendly captain, Antonio Balbi, gathered at an airport. They were going on a trip to Chile for a special rugby match. Everyone was excited and looking forward to the journey. Plane crash. They boarded a large aircraft known as a Fairchild F-227D. The people on board were smiling, cheering, and enjoying themselves as the jet took off. They had their rugby balls in their hands and were decked out in team colors. It was as though an incredible journey had just begun. However, everything abruptly went horribly wrong. The aircraft encountered turbulence or turbulent air. It was like riding an unstoppable roller coaster. Inside the plane, objects were flung around and people yelled. It caused mayhem and injuries when it crashed into the mountains. Their happy travels had devolved into a terrifying ordeal. The survivors were now stranded in the highlands, far from any support. They had to contend with the bitter cold, a lack of food, and the absence of any support. Even though their narrative was just getting started, it will be difficult and demanding. Their battle for survival and the tough decisions they would have to make to live came to an end with this accident. Surviving the mountains. The survivors of the jet crash into the mountains faced difficult circumstances. They were cold, injured, and stranded somewhere with no one to provide assistance. Near the wreckage, the gang crowded together in an attempt to keep warm and cheerful. The food problem. The survivors had a serious issue as the days went by. They were running low on food. Their meager food supply that they had brought on the aircraft was rapidly running out. They were aware they would not be able to endure the harsh and frigid mountains for very long without finding a method to eat. The difficult decision. Their predicament was increasingly dire. Antonio, the group's commander, had to make a difficult choice. He hinted that they might have to consume the corpses of those who perished in the collision as a last option. It was quite difficult for anyone to accept this viewpoint. It made them feel sad and scared. Struggling to survive. The mountain lifestyle was quite difficult. Not enough food, sub-freezing conditions, and injuries were all they had to contend with. They were also concerned that rescue crews would miss them. A few members of the group suffered severe injuries and others became quite ill. It was an ongoing struggle against the harsh surroundings, terror, and starvation. Testing their unity. The survivors were tried as a unit, but they were still like a big family. The thought of eating their friends' and loved ones' corpses unnerved some people. They were concerned about the implications and how it would alter them. Their predicament became considerably more difficult when the group began to quarrel and feel separated. Facing the elements, they were forced to take refuge amid the plane's wreckage due to the severe weather in the mountains. To stay warm and alive, they made use of anything they could. They had to withstand bitter cold, snow, and high heights under these harsh conditions. A battle of body and mind. As time went on, they found themselves engaged in a mental struggle in addition to one with the weather. They were cold, hungry, and having a hard time holding on to hope. The survivors needed to draw on their inner fortitude to persevere when things seemed hopeless. This was a tough and demanding section of their narrative. They were discovering what it meant to be alive and the lengths they would go to in order to endure hardship. A daring trek for help. The survivors came to the realization that they would not be rescued by anyone as time went on. They had to make a bold choice because they were far from civilization. Their commander, Antonio, made the decision to embark on a perilous quest for assistance with a group of pals. They felt they had no other option even though they knew it was perilous. It was by no means an easy journey. They had to ascend high, treacherous slopes and trek through deep snow. Avalanches presented themselves as enormous snow and ice heaps that came tumbling down. They had to endure bitterly cold conditions and a physically taxing walk. Reaching the Chilean shepherd, the king found a lone Chilean shepherd dwelling in the mountains during their travels. This shepherd turned into a beacon of hope among their trying circumstances. He assisted them and even provided a means of communication with those beyond the mountains. This interaction, like a tiny miracle. A glimmer of hope. For the first time in a long time, they felt hopeful thanks to the shepherd's help. They were aware that their loved ones were waiting for them to return with assistance at the crash site. They persevered in spite of the risks and their weariness because of this hope. The trekkers' struggles. Numerous difficulties beset the party of hikers. Their bodies were not acclimated to the severe environment of the highlands, and they were hungry and exhausted. They needed to keep supporting one another and keep in mind that their families were waiting for them at the crash site. Connecting with the outside world. They were able to get in touch with persons who could arrange a rescue thanks to the shepherd's assistance. It was as though someone had thrown them a lifeline. They could now see the conclusion of their arduous and protracted trip, and they knew aid was on its way. This was a pivotal moment in the narrative. In spite of everything, the survivors were making significant progress in the direction of rescue. They were resolved to return to their loved ones who were waiting at the crash scene despite the danger, tiredness, and unknown they faced. The rescue and emotional reunion. A ray of optimism emerged as the group that had undertaken the perilous voyage sought out to the outside world. Helicopters and medical teams were brought in for a rescue attempt by the authorities. Awaiting their rescue, the survivors who stayed at the accident scene experienced a mixture of optimism and worry. The trekkers went back to the crash site with the rescuers. Emotions pervaded the air, including joy, exhilaration, and relief. As the survivors rejoined with their friends and family who had been waiting impatiently for their return, there were embraces, tears, and a deep sense of thankfulness. Safety at last. The rescue meant that the survivors could finally feel protected. The icy, merciless mountains no longer held them alone. They were back in the company of those who loved them and were prepared to aid in their healing. The survivors, however, experienced conflicting emotions. Not all of the people who started the voyage with them had survived the horrible trauma they had gone through. Being saved brought with it a sense of loss and sadness as well as relief. Reflecting on the ordeal, the survivors thought back on their experiences as they made an effort to reintegrate into daily life. They reflected on the tough decisions they had had to make in order to live, such as considering eating their friends' corpses. They were troubled by these recollections and began to wonder what it meant to be human. The media spotlight. It was difficult for the survivors to reintegrate into society. The media descended upon them, sending reporters and cameras in all directions. Their predicament became more complicated when they were requested to share their experience with the entire globe. Families' reactions. Their families were overjoyed to have them back, but also concerned about the physical and emotional scars that the survivors carried with them. It was not easy to put the past behind and start anew. This part of the story marked the survivors' return to safety and the beginning of their journey to recovery. They faced danger, made a daring trek for help, and were now back among people who loved and cared for them. However, their story was far from over, as they had to come to terms with the trauma of their experience and the complex feelings they carried with them. Copying and moving forward. Coping with the trauma of their experience is a formidable challenge. Some survivors continue to wrestle with guilt and the haunting memories of their desperate act of cannibalism. The events on that ill-fated flight have indelibly marked their lives. The impact of the ordeal is far-reaching, both individually and collectively. Antonio's leadership during the ordeal and the unity of the group stand as testaments to the strength of the human spirit. These survivors emerge not only with their lives intact, but with an unshakable bond forged in the crucible of adversity. The mystery of Flight 571 remains a haunting and inspiring story, one that leaves us questioning the boundaries of morality and marveling at the resilience of the human spirit. It is a tale of survival that defies belief, a testament to the extraordinary lengths individuals can go to when faced with the ultimate challenge. And that, my friends, is the incredible mystery of Flight 571. The journey of these survivors is a powerful reminder of the strength of the human spirit and the extraordinary lengths people can go to in the face of life's greatest challenges. If you found this story as fascinating and inspiring as we did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more gripping stories of survival and resilience. Share your thoughts and comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective on this incredible story.